of the women parliamentaries of P20 with the topic Women in Power, Increasing Representativeness of Women in Decision-Making Spaces. Despite the advancements made in the past decades, women are still underrepresented in decision and governance instances at a local level and a world level. Only 13% of elected people to lead international organizations, multilateral, since 1995 are women. In the current rhythm, we estimate 140 years are needed for women to be equally represented in positions of power, in leadership, at the workplace, in positions of power. So it will take us at least 4 years to reach equality in the representations of national parliaments. The goal of this table is to debate good national and international practices to ensure gender parity and fight obstacles to the participation of women in their diversity in G20 and globally. More specifically, this panel will discuss item 1, call for the representation of women in parliament and the results. Item 2, successful experiences to fight political violence, including in digital media. Item 3, care, policy, and good practices that ensure access and maintenance of women in spaces of power. So to start, I want to invite for 5 minutes the representative of Mexico.
Muy buenos días a todas. Saludo con mucho aprecio a la senadora Doniña Seabra, presidenta en esta ocasión de la mesa, y por supuesto a la diputada Soraya Santos, procuradora de la mujer en la Cámara de Diputados, y a todas las compañeras diputadas y senadoras de Brasil, de cada rincón de Brasil. Gracias por su atención, por supuesto también a la diputada Benedita da Silva, jefa de todo aquí. Un saludo para ella. Y por supuesto también desde aquí saludamos a nuestro gran anfitrión Arturo Lira, el presidente del P20. Amigas todas, reflexionemos el día de hoy sobre el tema que hoy nos convoca, que es construyendo un mundo justo y sustentable. Y veamos qué es lo que estamos debatiendo al interior de nuestras cámaras, de nuestros parlamentos,
House of Representatives, our parliaments, so we can achieve that. And what do I mean? Let's see statistics and historical numbers on how our parliaments are built or are split between men and women. In order to have a fair, sustainable world, we need parity. Equality, parity to the positions we have, the seats we have, especially those of a popular representation in the houses, and the vertical and horizontal equality, for a better word, for women and girls. I want to bring a Mexican case. We are a democratic republic.
We are also we have the 3 powers, like many of the countries present here, the judiciary, the executive, and the legislative. We have a bicameral parity set up in the legislators chamber. We have 500 seats, out of which we have 250 for women and 250 to men. Well, we have included this legislation on favor of parity and inclusion. We have 128 senators, out of which 50% are women, though.
La Suprema
Then
Corte
again.
de Justicia de la Nación, que es el máximo órgano de impartición de justicia, lo preside una mujer. El Tribunal Electoral del Poder Judicial de la Federación es el órgano responsable
is the organ responsible for each.
y resolver controversias en materia electoral, también lo preside una mujer. Por otro lado, el Instituto Nacional Electoral, que es el órgano autónomo encargado en México de organizar todos los procesos electorales del país, lo preside una mujer. El Banco de México, que es el órgano autónomo que conduce la política monetaria, lo preside una gobernadora mujer. La Comisión Nacional de Derechos Humanos, que es un organismo autónomo que se encarga de proteger, vigilar, promover y divulgar los derechos humanos de todas las personas, también lo preside una mujer. De las 32 entidades federativas o estados que componen nuestra república, 13 de ellos son gobernados por mujeres. En el Poder Ejecutivo contamos con el gabinete paritario. Fíjense nada más, tenemos una serie de ministerios o secretarías, que es la de Gobernación, Educación Pública, Seguridad, Protección Ciudadana, Cultura, Economía, Medio Ambiente, Recursos Naturales, Bienestar y Relaciones Exteriores, también los maneja una mujer. Son las ministras. Este 2 de junio nos congratulamos las mujeres porque México eligió por primera vez en su historia a una mujer, a la doctora Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo, como presidenta de la República. ¿Cómo llegamos a tener esta conformación paritaria? ¿Cómo llegamos a esto en México? Me voy a permitir hacer una narrativa breve. En 1953 se reconoció el derecho al voto para las mujeres. 40 años después, en 1993, adoptamos las acciones afirmativas impulsadas por mujeres militantes. Aquí hay una de ellas, mi querida Amalia García, que es una de las guerreras también que estuvo conformando desde los 90 para luchar por la igualdad y a través de las cuotas. Fueron primero las acciones afirmativas y empezamos con un 30%. Eso fue el inicio. No crean que fue fácil, porque se dio la lucha primero al interior de los partidos. ¿Por qué? Porque son los partidos los que postulan. Entonces, en las asambleas generales partidistas, las mujeres tomaron la iniciativa de llevar esta propuesta a sus partidos. Por supuesto que hubo una revolución interior en los partidos porque no era nada popular las propuestas. Y en ese sentido,
because they were not seen as popular, those proposals. But we went on struggling for that. Well, our president here had no problem in adopting those quotas. She supported us a lot. In the end of the day, we made it through a continuous permanent fight and struggle. In 1996, those affirmative actions, which started within the parties, as I said, as something that may become true, as if it's something that was like seen as an option to be taken by the parties. But 1996, we had candidacies included, made mandatory candidacy of women in the electoral law. Until 2012, it was made mandatory, those 30%. There were internal struggles, some adopted, others didn't. So we wanted to change the law so that the parties did not meet those 30% level. They could even lose their registration as parties. So 6 years afterwards, 2008, it was a change in the electoral code to increase this to 40%. And this has been an important point in terms of increasing the women's participation. And then there was a set of reforms that took place in the state, and there were negotiations made with women. And you were also present, my friend, in the policy. And there were negotiations which were carried out with the majority of men. Structural reforms, educational, financial, energy reforms were discussed, and women were participating in that. And besides, yes, we wanted to see a reform in favor of constitutional parity. So the constitutional parity was achieved in a clear-cut, transparent negotiation at the table, and we finally reached this to make it possible for women to run for office. 2019, another constitutional amendment was made to achieve parity as to everything. I mean, in all cabinets, in all parties where women need to be present and represented. And after this amendment of the Constitution, a more recent reform takes place in May 2023, and it was forbidden that somebody who could be run for office if this person, this man, was involved in violence cases of any type against women. So this reform has been very controversial in its proposal. So no aggressor, no violent person couldn't even be at any government body. And this changed also the way we tackle political violence against women, because it looks like as we move forward in terms of achieving a position of power, political violence increases at the same time. So there is this lack of resistance against this growth among women. And like I said, greater participation of women led to more violence, and other types of reform to deter political violence against women were necessary, and the definition or outlining of laws against digital violence, among other types of violence like political one, which is something that hurts a lot, especially vulnerable women. And the judiciary power of the Federation had a special design of a law to quickly resolve issues of political violence against women. Severe sanctions were thought of, like the suspension of candidacy or suspension of national records of the person as recorded as a violent person against women. And it's been essential, the contribution we had in order to strengthen equality through sentences, court sentences. So it's important for all of us to be in touch with the courts for synergistic joint work, to be in a better position, politically speaking, to ensure that the victims, gender political victims, are protected. Those sentences by the courts made it mandatory to the parties review the internal statutes, and women were in a hard position when they were running for office in far-flung areas. We wanted to reach them out. Men usually they take the front in those districts and have a major advantage. So in the districts where a high level of competitiveness, well, we wanted to make sure that women really could run shoulder to shoulder for office with men and be in the same position. To make it, we wanted to make it mandatory for the parties to reach out for those women. Mexico was undergoing a process in which we were about to approve reform to create a national system of caregiving, to share the household work in a fair manner between men and women. Honorable Presidents, dear friends, honorable deputies or legislators, women's participation in the public life is not just about making to positions, to important positions, but moreover want to overcome obstacles, and it's made possible through a constant endless struggle, through activism and resilience and solidarism between women in all ambits, and also reviewing and adopting best practices, and also showing off abuse cases. It's a right we have, and we stand for 52% of the population of Mexico, and therefore we need to hold, make our proposals hold. Well, we want to achieve gender equality according to Agenda 2030, and we want to have full inclusion in our societies. Parity of equality, in order to become consistent, shouldn't be seen as just affirmative actions in the realm of secondary laws. Should be part of constitutional guarantees, the structure of the state. It must be put into the Constitution. The equality agenda should be seen as a cross-cutting, all over the board, across the board approach. We have all the parties all join and working jointly for improving the women's positions. We have also barriers to be overcome: feminicide, killing of women, violence against women, construction of public policies without the perspective of gender, making sure we have egalitarian spaces for women, and we need to move ahead without stopping. Women need to be empowered always and all over the place. For all women, the same for all, equal for all, for men and women. That's what we want to achieve. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your participation, Ms. Marcela Guerra Castillo from Mexico. And now I want to pass the floor to the U.S. representative. I'd like to ask each of the participants say your name before your statement, and you have 5 minutes, okay? United States.
Thank you very much. That's a hard act to follow, but I will try to stay within my 5 minutes. I'm Congresswoman Young Kim, and I represent California's 40th Congressional District in the House of Representatives. And I also serve as chairwoman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee's Subcommittee on Indo-Pacific. And I also serve as co-chair of the Bipartisan Maternity Care Caucus, Women in STEM Caucus, Financial Literacy and Wealth Creation Caucus. Along with my other women leaders from around the world, I'm honored to be here with you at this first P20 meeting of women parliamentarians. And I'm hopeful that our discussions will lead to closer working relations to support our respective countries' shared priorities and also uplift one another as women leaders. And I really appreciate the opportunity to make friendship and also build relationship. I always think of what former UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher said. In politics, if you want something said, ask a man. But if you want something done, ask a woman. I'm proud and humbled to be able to give back to my community and country as a member of Congress. But I'm also proud of my heritage as one of the first Korean American women to serve in the United States Congress. And I may be one of the first, but I know I'm not the last. Just over a century ago, women in the United States could not even vote. Now, we have a record number of 154 women serving in Congress. There is certainly more work to be done to see more women in government, but these numbers show how far we have come. Each of us in this room has broken a glass ceiling, but we all have had our fair share of trials that we had to overcome to get here. Sacrifices were made in the process. Uphill battles were climbed. The fact that we're here now, representing our respective countries, shows our resilience and strength. As we break ceilings, we can't close the door on our next generation. I see tremendous value in mentoring young women who will fill future leadership roles. I've had the pleasure of mentoring women state legislators and newly elected congresswomen. To empower more women to fill leadership spaces, we must start with the basics. Around the world, women still lack economic opportunities to start their own businesses. Women are victims of gender-based violence and conflict, and they are bound by societal expectations. Therefore, we must do more. We need women to have the opportunities to succeed and offer our unique perspectives in the classroom, in the workplace, and in the halls of government. As Maternity Care Caucus Chair, I work with female legislators on both sides of the aisle to advance policies that improve maternal care and health outcomes. Data shows that U.S. maternal mortality rates are on the rise, and mental health challenges before, during, and after pregnancy factor into these rates. So, I work with another woman legislator to introduce a bill creating a national maternal mental health hotline that provides free and confidential service 24/7, 365 days a year, and it has been operating successfully for 2 years now. On the Women in STEM Caucus, we work to promote women and girls' access to STEM education, close the gender pay gap in STEM fields, and get more women in the U.S. STEM workforce. I also am a co-chair of the Financial Literacy and Wealth Creation Caucus, and my co-chair is a woman legislator on the other side of the political aisle. Through this caucus, we're working to empower all Americans with the tools needed to learn how to budget, invest, gain wealth, and avoid debt, fraud, and other financial concerns. Helping women entrepreneurs access to capital is also very important. A report by Wells Fargo this year showed that in 2019, women-owned businesses increased at nearly double the rate of male counterparts. And from 2022 to 2023, the rate of growth increased to 4.5 times. So, we want to equip women with the resources they need to make their dream a reality. For these caucuses, we engage with nonprofit, local, and regional organizations to provide a platform for women to be heard. We're half the population. We should have a say in the important decisions that impact our lives and our future. We need to keep using our voices and bring girls along with us so they do not just follow, but create their path and their trails of their own. Thank you.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you.
Passo a
Now I want to pass the floor
Itália.
to
Também se
Italy.
apresente, por favor.
Please say your
Pelo
name.
tempo de 5 minutos.
You have
Senhora Lavínia.
Thank you. I am Lavinia Menuni, Senator from the Italian Republic.
Distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen,
Distinguished
please allow me to
representatives,
thank
Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to thank the P20 Secretariat, Chamber of Deputies of Brazil, to be here in Maceió at this important forum for the first P20 meeting of women parliamentarians. On behalf of my country, Italy, it is both a pleasure and an honor to engage in dialogue concerning the female participation in decision-making spaces, empowering nations also by empowering women. And let me remember those ladies who acted to assert the right to vote so many years ago in Great Britain. And the motto was, we are not lawbreakers, we are lawmakers. But since then, we have changed history, and so probably we need to continue changing history. And now, after this brief introductory greeting, let me continue in my mother tongue, Italian, which will be translated into English. As we said, in our history, we had to achieve the right to vote, active and passive vote. And we must say that in Italy, in 1948, in the first legislature of the Italian Republic, there was only 5% of elected women. Well, today we are 33% on the average of the European Union. We had the pleasure of having the first president of the European Union, a woman, and I'm very proud to have today the first president, the first prime minister in Italy, who is a female, Giorgia Meloni. There have been many rules we had to enact in the past years in order to favor the presence of women in institutions, and I can give you a personal example. For many years, I was a council member in Rome. And when I was elected for the first time in 2008, there were 3 women out of 60 in the city council. 3 women from different parties. So from the city council in Rome, a national action started to ask for the double gender preference, because it's very difficult for women to be competitive. But I would like to draw your attention to the fact that one of the great elements for all women working, and also for women who have a difficult life, a working life, in politics as well, is that of intervening in the policies that allow you to reconcile life and work. In Italy, there is still a long way to go. It is critical to support women in the double role when they decide to have a double role, the role of being a mother and, of course, of being a worker. So this long path is in Article 51 of our Constitution that addresses the removal of obstacles, especially in Article 117 of the Constitution. Now I'd like to draw your attention, as we are in the P20, about G7, which was just held in Italy. The summit under the Italian presidency led to very relevant conclusions about topics that interest us today. In particular, commitments on the economic empowerment. I know this is one of the topics that will be addressed by our colleagues from the Italian Parliament in the next session. The topic of equal leadership, the equal pay between men and women, that requires our attention. Considering the magnitude of global challenges, Italy, in organizing this summit in Puglia, decided to convey an image of an open G7, extending the invitation to the outreach session to the other major global partners, including Brazil, Argentina, and many others. and attention was given to the great global challenges that require our attention, especially sustainable development that was addressed in yesterday's session, and AI, artificial intelligence, that requires a very careful and transnational regulation. Among the Gender Equality Advisory Council recommendations in the G7, there was the priority to conflict care, Generation Z, and education. Remember that the presence of women in politics requires the attention to the care demands. We should also remember very interesting data. Women in administrations or management are very productive and have a very low corruption rate. So they can take care of everything at all levels in public administration in different countries. In the G7 declaration, there was also the commitment of the risk of disasters, and especially an interesting topic because in Europe we are going through a phase of conflict. The use of rape as a weapon of war on the international level, we should be very strict about that with very firm policies. And finally, the recognition that I hope the Brazilian presidency in the G20 can address regarding the long-term care, the protection of parentality, promoting the balance between life and work, and facing demographic challenges of societies that are becoming old, which is a particular challenge for Italy. So I hope the Brazilian G20 can receive the baton from the Italian G7. And I'd like to thank you for the work and the wonderful idea of holding the first female or women meeting of the P20. To conclude, thank you very much, and we wish you all a good work. Thank you.
Eu gostaria de pedir que todos acompanhassem o próximo.
Now, please, I'd like for you to be close to your tables. We have panels, and you can control your time for each one of you. Thank you for your presentation. Now I'd like to pass the floor over to the representative of China, Ms. Lavinia.
Madam Chair, dear colleagues, women are the creators of human civilization and the drivers of social progress. Ensuring women's participation in politics is crucial to inspire the active participation of half of the country's population, which contributes markedly to the advancement of human civilization and democracy. China attaches high importance on women's participation in political decision-making and national governance. China's electoral law stipulates that deputies to the National People's Congress and local people's congresses at all levels should be highly representative. A certain quota of women deputies should be maintained. The efforts should be made to increase that quota. In the current National People's Congress of China, there are 790 women deputies like me, accounting for 26.54% of the total, an increase of 1.64 percentage points over the previous session, reaching a historic high. as their female deputy to the Chinese National People's Congress, I have personally experienced the steadily improving environment for women's political participation in China. And the results have been significant. Here, I would like to share some of China's practices in promoting women's political participation and national governance to promote the development of democracy. First is to improve legal safeguards to ensure women's political participation. China regards gender equality as a fundamental national policy and continuously improves the institutional mechanism to protect women's political participation. China's law on women's rights and interest protection was adopted in 1992 and was revised respectively in the year 2005, 2018, and 2022. This newly revised law, which has merely taken effect since January 2023, ensures that special attention is given to the training and selection of female officials, especially those from ethnic minorities. Special regulations are set for government agencies, social groups, and enterprises to train, elect, and appoint female officials. Adhering to the principle of gender equality during this process and ensuring sufficient women's access to leadership. It also grants the Women's Federation the right to recommend female officials to government agencies, social groups, and enterprises. Secondly, to strengthen capacity building to improve women's political participation skills. China launched special and tailored training for female officials to practically sharpen women's political participation skills and capacities. For example, higher education institutions or schools of the Communist Party of China conduct training programs to further improve the qualification and working capacity of female officials. By selecting outstanding female officials from grassroots women's federations and women's organizations for training, a great number of community-level women leaders and organizations apt for political participation have stood out. Thirdly, to strengthen public communications to create a good environment for women's political participation. We actively promote the idea of gender equality, ensure equal political participation for both men and women, encourage women to go out of their homes and participate in social public affairs. We have redoubled efforts in shaping the media image of women participating in politics, communicating the roles and contributions of female officials in public affairs decision-making and management, and gradually improve the environment for women's political participation so as to inspire women's inner drive for political participation. Women are half of the driving force of a country's development. I believe that through institutional guarantees, capacity building, and communication efforts, women will play a pivotal role in national politics, thus making significant contributions to the development of society and democracy. China is willing to strengthen cooperation with parliaments of G20 to strengthen international cooperation in this regard, to further safeguard the rights and interests of women, and to make our contributions to the ensuring of women's rights and their political participation. Thank you.
Muito obrigada. Passo a palavra para a representante da Alemanha.
Thank you. I'm going to pass the floor to the German representative. Please say your name.
Dear fellow parliamentarians, my name is Beate Schlupp. I'm the first vice president of the regional parliament of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. I feel very much honored to speak to you today as a part of the German delegation. I am representing a German subnational parliament in my function to replace a member of the German Federal Council. Today's date, the 2nd of July, it's already mentioned, seems to be a day of liberation. It marks the end of many battles, a precondition for any decision-making space. It is vital to analyze such steps forward from many different perspectives. It is a task of politics to make visible the positions of women and the whole people, to show which present conditions are harmful to them and to seek consensus. The former president of the Federal Republic of Germany, Richard von Weizsäcker, said, "There was, I quote, no standard for being a human. Humans are diverse. So, political framework have to allow diversity." My two key messages are, first, much has been done regarding gender equality, but this state is fragile. Secondly, much still has to be done, because women are structurally less favorably positioned. I come to my first point. Much has already been done, but the state is fragile. Institutionally and practically, the chances for women have risen to participate in decision-making spaces. In the 1970s, major supranational frameworks such as the United Nations and the EU began to formulate persistent gender inequalities as a constant call to action for organizations of all kinds and to introduce monitoring procedures. Also within my political party, the Christian Democratic Union of Germany, there has been an important change. Since the year 2002, more and more women have been taking part in the political decision-making process. At the national level in Germany, for 16 years we have had a female head of government, Mrs. Angela Merkel. Some found it funny to call her mummy or to comment on her hairstyle, but only for the first time. Now, 7 out of 17 members of the actual German federal cabinet are female, and no one would nowadays think of making any differences regarding their capacities because of their gender. Within the German regional parliaments, too, the preponderance of men lessened. In my regional parliament, 37 of parliamentarians are women. Women have been presiding the parliament since the year 2002. Equality between men and women is committed in the Constitution of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. The employees of the Ministry of Justice, Equality and Consumer Protection in my region have the opportunity to work remotely for up to 60% of their regular weekly working hours. By avoiding the driveway to work, they can save valuable time. What is more, within the public administration of the region of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern at ministerial level, there is a special networking, mentoring and training program to increase the proportion of women in higher administrative positions. It also includes the regional parliament administration. In addition, female participation plays a role in German interparliamentary cooperation. Female guests from countries of the EU Eastern Partnership visited Mecklenburg-Vorpommern last November. Last month we've had European elections. My memories of them and of the local elections in my region are still quite vivid. On the other hand, some parties used female quotas or alternate men and women when setting up candidate lists. As a result of the European election, 7 out of 35 mandates of my party's delegation to the European Parliament are carried by women. So that corresponds to 1/5 in my party's German delegation. 35 of 96 members of parliament in the German delegation in the European Parliament are female. This corresponds to about 33%. In the 80s, the proportion was 15%. On the other hand, we observed developments back to traditional gender roles in the programs of some political parties in Germany. They stand for an abolition in the so-called gender ideology and neglect the fact that there is only one gender, the human gender, in all its naturally given expressed and unexpressed variety. But much has to be done, and I try to come to an end. That's why, let me stress at least, from our deliberations, also lessons should be drawn to trace the overlooked, ignored, and disadvantaged people and groups. I think, for example, of women with handicap, abused, migrant, and poor women. They must be enabled to articulate their needs. Thank you for your attention.
Muito obrigada. A próxima a falar é a senadora Seraida.
Thank you so much. Senator Seraida will speak now.
Bom dia.
Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here in our country. It's a pleasure to receive you right now in such an important moment for us women. One more opportunity to debate the progress that we have had in the participation in the spaces of power. In Latin America, in Mexico, Nicaragua, Bolivia, Argentina, they are countries that already had progress in the participation of women in politics, in equity. Even Cuba is into that role. And we, Brazilian women, Latin American women, we still have a long way to go. Countries like Mexico, Bolivia, Nicaragua, even Argentina, they can feel very happy compared to other countries that are considered very developed. I would like to highlight the strength of Parliament, women in Parliament, in the National Congress, that is bicameral. We had a very complicated moment. We are living such a complicated moment of trying to retreat, to have our rights withdrawn. One of them, in this reform, electoral reform, a man there to withdraw from the report the conquer of 30% of candidates, female candidates. If us didn't stand, we will not have conquer that their withdrawal, and that's a minimum example. Another example that I have is that I was the president for during 2 or 3 or 4 years, president of the party, president of women of the biggest party in Brazil, IPASMEN. And I wasn't autonomous enough. I didn't know the exact amount of finances that were in the bank account. I was not able to know how that money will be used. I was under the power of other people, always trying to change things. Because if we give up, if women in politics give up, how it will be possible that we help other women? And in 2022, I had the opportunity of running for president. It was one more violent moment in politics. These are issues that I couldn't reveal. Why? Because I'm afraid. I have fears concerning my family, my colleagues, and me. Here in Brazil, we live a process of
Os então adversários do então presidente Jair Bolsonaro
the spies. We had a process of spying, legal spying in the country, and I was one of them, the people who suffer from that. It was not only on our phones for listening to our conversations and calls. They even knew where our locations were, the geolocation. Why did they want that? Why did they want the location of the rival, of our kids, of our families? So I conclude my moment by thanking you for your presence and telling you that these encounters cannot be only for speeches. We only live on speeches, on meetings. We are always together, but we never go to actions. We never put our needs into action, and we need to find a way, worthy Republican, without violence, but we need our rights to be worth. Here in Brazil, we are more than 50% of people are women, and we don't feel represented good enough. That's why we all count on your experience in this healthy share of experience. I'm very sorry for my hard words, but I don't have another space to speak, and I need to speak. Thank you so much.
Agradeço, senadora Soraya
Thank you, Senator Soraya Tronic. And now I want to pass the floor to Russia. Please say your name before you start your speech.
Уважаемые коллеги,
Dear colleagues, my name is Sakharova Tatiana. I'm the Senator of the Russian Federation. I'm representing the region of Murmansk in the upper chamber of the Russian Federation. So once again, dear colleagues, the Russian Federation is now dealing with the gender equality, and we think that this is one of the key topics that is standing for the whole world community. Russian women are interested in full working capacity, but at the same time they are interested in family matters and family values such as giving birth to kids. At the same time, the priority of the state is the creation of the necessary conditions for the possibility to combine personal and family life for all women. We are continuing to carry out different programs for maternity and childhood and helping the childbirth. The Russian government is now actively involving women in different spheres of life, and they are more represented now in politics and economy. Women in Russia have a very good level of education. They represent 49% of all people employed in the economy. The level of economic activity of women is about 77%. And I'm very happy to inform you that in our countries, in many spheres of life, women become drivers of economical growth. The ratio of women entrepreneurship in the social sphere reaches 90%, and in the service
services sphere, 58%. The basis for better participation of women in the economy is helped with different acceleration programs, different competitions, and for women and successful women. Among them, a very important training program. My mother is an entrepreneur, and the competition leaders of support women in expert, which was initiated by the Federation Council together with the Russian Expert Center. In December 2022, Russia adopted a special national strategy of activities in the interests of women for 2023-2030, where we determined the main strategies of the state policy for women in middle terms. This document is aimed at consolidating the efforts of all the interesting parties in order to foster the principle of equal rights and equalities of men and women, and the creation of equal possibilities for their fulfillment. The questions of the realization of the strategy are fostered by the Coordination Council under the aegis of the government of the Russian Federation, where involved both all the three powers of the Russian Federation. As one of the most important points in this strategy is the fostering the cooperation with women and the participation of women in social and political life. In Russia, it's very important for women to be present in on local level of governance. At the same time, the number of women working in municipalities is now 3 times higher than the number of men. To fulfill this potential, to foster the leadership of women and the fostering of women's agenda in all spheres of life, we have a special project of the Federation Council, which is called the Eurasian Women's Forum. Among the projects of the Russian Eurasian Women's Forum, we have a special club of women parliamentarians, and among its priorities, the fostering of women's cooperation in political sphere and fostering of the formation of social lifts for women, helping them to exchange experiences in political sphere. Another project is called the fostering of positions of women in social and political life of the country and the creation of special conditions for their civil activity. This project is aimed at forming in women the interest to active political activity and working in political parties. Different tasks on the analysis of progress in the sphere of the rights of women. So in this sphere, we will cooperate with the UN Women and other organizations such as the World Bank. We actively work with G20, and we are cooperating on the project which is called Women in the Dialogue of International Organizations. We hope to create a better dialogue between women regional leaders with the help of the project which is called the Eurasian Community of Women Regional Leaders. One of the best projects on fostering the women's leadership in Russia is the special training program Woman a Leader, realized under the presidential platform Russia, the country of possibilities. Since 2020, there have been 7 training years. 2 of them have become international. The training for this program has been successful for more than 100 participants from 78 regions of Russia and 31 countries of the world. The fostering of the possibilities of women in decision-making that we discussed today is one of the main points of the agenda of the fulfillment of rights and of women in the society. It has been said many times of women parliamentarians that despite all the difficulties and challenges of this step of transformation, women are still committed to principles of humanity, partnership, friendship, and understanding. It is principally important that the new format in the new system of events of G20 not to be permanent but become a traditional. And the most important for us is for this meeting to be recommended as the open and friendly discussion with the possibility to unite everybody and with serious project potential. And I would like to say thank you to our colleague from Brazil who said that today the platform should not only become the practical example for all the women and to be full of different practical decisions and solutions that will help us move forward and fulfill the goals that we have. We are sure that the women are able to do anything because we are a very huge but soft power. Thank you.
Obrigada, senhora Tatiana Sarakova.
Obrigado, Kakova. Thank you, Kakova. Now I'll pass the floor over to Argentina. For 5 minutes, I'd like to inform you that we have a coffee break outside. So if you want to go out.
Pode sair, mas nós não vamos interromper. Vamos seguir.
Estimadas colegas parlamentarias, muy buenos días y también a todos los presentes. Quiero agradecer profundamente a nuestro inmenso hermano país del Brasil, con quien nos une una relación de tantísimos
our country,
años.
Brazil.
Nosotros exportamos nuestras ricas peras
We
y
export
manzanas
our
del Río
rich
Negro.
apples and pears from Black River.
Quiero agradecer.
So I want to thank you. My name is Lorena Villaverde. I'm a national representative and a national representative of the same party of Javier Milei. I celebrate this wonderful opportunity that we as parliamentary women have to reflect on the debates of 21st century on the well-being. First of all, we need to think on the benefits that we need to bring to society since our condition of women. We are the ones who are in charge of home, of life, the ones who create love against challenges, and we are the ones who are professional at work too. This and a lot more is what it means to be women nowadays. I have the great blessing to be a mom, the mother and the father of 2 kids, and I'm also an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, and I'm also the national deputy of Rio Negro and the first women in the Commission of Energy and Fuels in Argentina. This highest responsibility that the government of President Javier Milei has appointed me in such a refundational moment in our history, Argentina. In this Argentina that have had the possibility of get the main source of energy. And since from this place and commitment to develop the processes of investment, going side by side to the chains. A few days ago, we passed the bill, the law of basis for the freedom of people from Argentina. At the same time, I'm part of the government in my province, in Rio Negro, that is working to the possibility and the window that Argentina has to be a source of energy to the world, generating great expectations in investments and employment and new horizons for so many women. The challenges that we have ahead are enormous. Clearly, during a long time, we were in the bad areas of public life. 60 years ago, we conquered the right to vote, but right now we are in a new moment that is going to stay. That's why we have the moral obligation to take to the public politics our potential, professional potential. We need to make a balance into being mothers and the professional. We need to be the face for politics a face of love. I'm convinced that the vulnerability of our condition can be overcome by the desire of freedom in order to be commitment to serve the neighbor. And we cannot become victims. I see great examples of women fighters. This is my commitment. This is my duty as a mother, as a businesswoman, as a leader, and as a deputy. That's the reason why I am here. God bless us all, and long life to freedom. Thank you so much.
Agradeço a
Thank
representação
you,
da Argentina e passo a palavra
Argentina representative. Now I
para
want to
Índia,
pass the
para
floor
suas
to
contribuições.
India for her
Eu queria pedir para a
contributions.
organização
I
se
would
não
like
tem
to ask
jeito
the
de diminuir
organizers
o ar,
if we
está
can,
muito frio.
because the air conditioner is too cold here. Can you find a
Se
way
for possível,
to make it
passo a
warmer?
palavra para a Índia.
So
Muito
India,
obrigada e
you
seja
have the
bem-vinda.
floor. Thank you.
Namaskar, Chairperson and dear colleagues. I am
Caros
Sangeeta Yadav
colegas,
from the
eu sou
India,
Eva
member
da
of
Índia,
Parliament,
membro
Upper
do
House, Rajya Sabha.
Parlamento da Casa
Women
Superior da
political participation is the crucial for achieving gender equality and the fostering true democratic governments. When the women step into political roles, they challenge traditional gender norms and drive social progress. Countries with the higher gender equality in the politics are better at resolving conflict through dialogues, leading to more sustainable and the peaceful outcome, lasting peace. The goal of the achieving meaningful gender equality in the politics, the world over remains distant, and the step taken in the regard as far from satisfactory. Despite us upswing in the women participation as the electors, women continue to lag behind the men as a party members, as a candidates, running for legislative offices, as a elected members of the local councils, regional assemblies, national parliaments, and in the highest positions as a cabinet ministers, head of government, and the state. According to the UN, just 15 countries have a woman head of the state and 16 countries have a woman head of the government. Globally, only 6 countries have 50% or more women in the parliament in the single or the lower houses. Only 26.5% of the parliamentarians in the single or the lower houses are women. And there are 22 states in which women account for less than 10% of the parliamentarians in the single or the lower houses, including one lower chamber with no woman at all. Despite the fact that equal rights for the women are guaranteed in the constitution of the all modern democracies, this disparity between theory and the practices has time and again necessitated the need to focus on this issue. In the Indian scenario, from its inspection, the Indian Constitution guaranteed equality before law both genders in the Constitution of India. In 1950, India also became one of these few countries which gave the right to vote to its male and the female citizens in the one stroke. Whereas even some of the advanced Western countries like USA and UK granted the right to vote to their women citizens much later in 1920 and 1928 respectively. Similarly, the women have enjoyed the right to get elected as a members of legislative bodies right from the day of the commencement of the Constitution of India. The Constitution of 73rd and 74 Amendment Act 1993 reserved 1/3 of the seats in the such a bodies of women, redefining the gender representation in the decision-making process at the grassroots level. Since then, 21 states and 2 union territories of the India have made provisions in the respective state Panchayati Raj Acts rules for 50% reservation for the women in the panchayats under the Article 243D of the Constitution of India. Similarly, the 17 states and 1 union territory has made provision for the reservation of 1/3 of seats for the women in the urban local bodies under Article 243T of the Constitution. Today, with the over 1.4 million elected women representative, India is the part of cohort of 20 countries where women hold more than 40% of seats in the local bodies. Studies have shown that enhanced representation has directly empowered women by allowing them to the influences decision on the issue directly impacting women and the children, such as health, education, alcoholism, sanitation, clean water, and renewable energy, enabling them to push sustainable development goal to the last miles. Despite the increase in the women representation in the local bodies, their representation in the Indian Parliament has remained below the desired level. The recent unanimous passage of the Women Reservation Bill by the both houses of the Indian Parliament has paved the way for the reservation of 1/3 of the seats in the lower houses of the Parliament and State Legislative Assembly, signaling a positive shift in attitudes towards politics empowerment of the women. Women parliamentarians have made significant contributions in the shaping legislation and advocating for the societal transformation. Their involvement in the parliamentary debates has drawn attention to the vital issue affecting women and the marginalized groups. Additionally, the women parliamentarians have introduced numerous private members' bills, women's rights, social welfare, and the gender equality. In the conclusion, India has made significant strides in the political empowering women. Increased the political participation of the women has not only enhanced their role in the decision-making and democratic process of the country, but also deepened the roots of the more representative and responsive governments. Thanks to all.
Muito obrigada. Passo a palavra.
Thank you. I want to pass the floor to the Korean Republic.
Dear colleagues, my name is Kang Kyung-soo, member of the Korean National Assembly. Since the adoption of the Platform for Action at the Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing in 1995, the international community has been committed to ensuring equal participation of women in all areas. Despite the progress in women's rights, inequalities remain in different nations at different levels, and serious discrimination also still exists. Therefore, our continued efforts to address this issue is essential. In Korea, gender equality is a constitutional value, and we're committed to incorporate gender responsiveness throughout the legislative process, policy planning, budgeting, and spending. The Korean National Assembly also adopted several measures to ensure gender equality in our chamber. In the general election in 2000, 30% of proportional representation seats was allocated to women, and in the next election in 2004, the number was increased to 50%. Furthermore, political parties nominating female candidates for more than 30% of electoral districts became eligible for additional subsidies. As a result, in the 2004 election, the percentage of women MPs more than doubled from 6% to 13%, or 40 seats. It was the first time in history where our parliament had a double-digit percentage of women members. So now, 2024, it was 20 years ago. So we increased the number of women MPs from 6% to 13%. In particular, more women are elected in electoral districts where gender quotas are not mandatory. In 1996, only 2 women were elected in local districts, but the number has steadily rising to 36 in the latest election in 2024, this year. And it exceeds the number of women MPs elected through party lists where a 50% gender quota applies. So I am one of the member of the Korean National Assembly who were elected as proportional representation. We have 300 members in the Korean National Assembly, and we have 20% of women MPs in our house. This is due to women's active political engagement and party's efforts to attract talented female leaders. We're also promoting a gender-equal legislature by conducting relevant research and analysis at National Assembly organizations. For example, the National Assembly Budget Office publishes gender-responsive budget analysis reports every year, while the National Assembly Research Service conducts research to ensure that gender perspectives are adequately incorporated into legislative and budgetary considerations. In 2021, the Speaker established the Gender Equality Advisory Committee, which proposed a mandatory gender quota for nominations in electoral districts and a permanent organization to support gender equality in Parliament. The government has set up the Gender Equality Committee chaired by the Prime Minister to lead the nation's gender equality policies. We're also committed to enhancing gender sensitivity throughout our society by educating gendered impacts in legislation, policies, and institutions. In addition, efforts to increase women's representation in various government committees has resulted in more than 40% of government committee seats being occupied by women since 2018. So it has been a significant achievement. In the private sector, the capital market law was amended in 2020 to require at least one female director on the boards of the country's top 100 companies. So in 2023, the number of female outside directors had tripled to 107 from just 35 at the time of the amendment. The Korean National Assembly has consistently played a leading role in adopting gender-responsive laws and policies. And as we move forward, the Korean National Assembly strongly hopes to maintain our strong alliance with the international community to take a responsible role. So thank you for listening, and God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Agradeço as contribuições e passo a palavra.
I now pass the floor to Ms. Delegate Soraya Santos, who works in the House of Representatives in Brazil. Good morning, all my friends. It's with a great joy that we are here in this meeting today at the P20 meeting, the first meeting of parliamentarian women. In this morning today, my name is Soraya Santos. I am a federal delegate from the state of Rio de Janeiro, which is a state that those of you who don't know, I wish you would get to know it one day. It is a state which is welcoming all tourism in Brazil. In this morning, through this reflection moment, the first speaker, Chairwoman Marcela, with all of her passion and her vehement fight in the parity, she makes a strong reflection about the central topic, which is G20. To build a more sustainable and fair world. And her questions provoked all of us by shining a light on a topic, which is how to speak of a more fair and sustainable world if we don't have discussions with the lens of gender on all causes, all things in general. How can we speak of democracy politically if this democracy must be the representation of the society, and the world still has no parity in all of its spaces and realms, and not everybody has such a strong politics as in Mexico, which ensures parities in all of the positions. I'd like to highlight that the importance of women in politics is of a fundamental role and importance, because through politics we are able to induce or modify or change or support the development of each of the countries. We must have global actions in such a way that no state, no country whatsoever may stop its work until we are ensuring the safety and dignity, the ability to come and go of all women on the planet. The rights that were acquired and attained by all countries, as I was saying before, the exchange in experiences, the economic results and the outcomes of the countries from the inclusion of women in their own spaces. These are things which are fundamentally important for all of us, which is why it's so important for us to have this meeting happening, because we're going to be inspiring from these moments. We're going to ensure our certainty that only through men and women walking together, women and men, we will indeed be able to have a more fair world and less unequal. In Brazil, it's not unlike that. Our fight, our struggle has been ongoing. We have changed the constitution, ensuring that all parties would have the mandatory 30% of unequal genders in its roster. Having a woman removed from a space means that 2 other male names will have to be removed as well. So this is something that helps us ensure that's the minimum 30% of resources, TV and radio airtime for men and women, showing that from the hashtag women not only need to have a voice and opportunities, which is why in this year, when Brazil had the biggest growth of women in the parliament in comparison to the past 30 years, we understand that there's a long ways to go. We are having also the judiciary branch on our side in this struggle. We were questioning the House of Justice. After all, we have to have justice in our homes as well. And we were seeing that in the judiciary branch, women were majoritarily only in the first instance, but whenever they would go into the second instance in the judiciary, there will be fewer of them. And last year, this House of Justice, the Court of Justice, had a resolution. When going to the second instance, this is how it's going to be in Brazil, and this is something that is already happening. To have a three-persons decision, one mixed, one women on this list of decision, until there's parity in justice, because it is really indeed frightening to have this situation. Also, when we see in Brazil a candidate which we see that has few votes, or maybe even 0 votes, which is what we call the orange women in Brazil, we are dismissing the entire group of women. They may win, but they won't be running their mandates. We have in Brazil over 200 parliamentarians in several levels, specifically in the municipalities that have lost their mandates because they had on their roster women who had very few votes, so they were not elected. So the political parties here in Brazil, they must have an investment in the training of women, the qualification of women. We need to bring women forth to understand this is not a struggle, it's not a fight for their right, but this is a civic fight. So the Brazil that we want for us is less unequal. We as women also must start changing the way that we relate, because we cannot stand anymore to say, "Lo, we're the first woman to do this, we're the first woman to do that." No, we are attorneys, we are economists, we are educators, so we do have our professions, we have our competences and skills, our values, they transform our cities, and we may eventually be the first president or maybe the first woman to take a position in the finance political position. We must change the way that we relate to all of this. It has to do with the self-esteem as well, because we must understand that is word that is said so often, the woman empowerment, women empowerment. Nothing empowers us. What empowers us is knowledge. It is to understand that women, when we bring our own expertise, our livelihoods, our experience, our lives, we change, we transform the social inequality. I am very much charmed by being in this meeting of parliamentarian women. We are in Brazil. We are 18% only of the parliamentarians. However, 42% of all of the legislative production is executed by women. It's quite pretty to see this female caucus here, because we have the following rule here. All of us represent one another. 80% of our themes are in common. Cancer has a party, doesn't have a party. The fight for the women's rights doesn't have a party. The right for equality doesn't have a party. I see here the women's caucus here represented in this table of discussions. Ms. Benedita Silva, coordinator of the female caucus, the women's caucus. She's a federal delegate from my own state, Rio de Janeiro. Herself being a black woman, myself being a white woman, her being from a left-wing party, myself being from a right-wing oriented party. And we work hand in hand because this is a fight that we all fight together. Only women may join Brazil together and the entire world together. Because when a woman works hard and they're able to demonstrate to the girls, to show the girls and to show the women, not only that they have the rights, but they have a need to transform. Because each one of us know that we will eventually go to our graves. We will die one day. But the question we must ask why we are living is, what we will leave, what world will we leave to our children and our grandchildren? And this is something that only women are able to achieve. I would like to finish my speech because I can see that I'm out of time, and the passion for this cause is so great that as all of you here, I'm sure that we could be speaking all day here to speak about the legislative production in the hands of women. Yes, we have a small caucus, a small roster of women, but it's very powerful. They have been doing a revolution, dealing with topics such as feminicide, dealing with topics such as political violence, which is currently a crime in Brazil, institutional violence. We are all fighting here for the pink terrorists. We want to know that those, regardless of the violence against women, how are the funding for female investors? We can only have that if we have an outlook for this productive aspect. Also, for this event, we have brought an exposition here. And with this exposition outside, this is why I ask to all of you here, which is the theme of our exposition outside, to reach power. Is it to actually have power? That's the question that we ask. The question that I'd like to share with you. To reach a position of power, is it truly to have power the way I see it? Only if we get there together in large numbers to make this world more fair and more equal is the only way. We've never had as much access as before. We have never been so alone in a society in which the young, the juveniles are mutilating themselves, they're doing bullying. We have used these communications tools, the technology tools, by fighting the digital crimes and making this communication tool into a tool that makes everybody closer together. And that's changes of experiences for all of you, not only within this forum here, but it has to be an ongoing discussion, because all of us who are in politics, and also politics is for the strong individuals. It's for people who have faith in life. It's for people who want to transform things, which is why I invite everyone here to use this tool that we have available. And yes, indeed, we must fight for a much more equal and fair world through women in parliaments. Thank you very much.
Passo imediatamente a palavra.
I now pass the floor to the Italian members for their second participation of the day.
Care colleghe,
As we have Giorgia Meloni as the first Prime Minister in Italy, and this has been a breakthrough, but it has also shown the complexity And when women get to power, centuries of prejudice and discrimination have prevented the full and accomplished realization of women's potential, leaving politics hostage to a limiting vision that wants it to be dominated by the same drives that animate our war. But politics is not and can never be merely an expression of power relations. Politics is the art of bringing opposites together. It is the ability to create conditions of collective progress and well-being. It is the instrument by which society advances, or it should be, at least. Independent studies and research have shown that the women shape the political environment according to virtuous models that tend to promote more inclusive and representative policies, such as laws on gender equality, on domestic violence, on the quality of education and healthcare improvement. The presence of women in the political environment is also a deterrent against corruption and crime. Women in politics are not the weaker sex. They are rather the strong embankment that contains and protects. But this is not enough to claim the space and the opportunities that we should be guaranteed. Unfortunately, it is not a female premier enough to be able to say that we have won the battle. In the 2023 Gender Equality Index, Italy scored 68.2 out of 100, an increase of 3.2 points compared to the previous edition. A score that shows a progression that has seen Italy improve 12 positions since 2005. We now have 6 women as ministers and 38 in the posts of deputy ministers and undersecretaries. We are talking about we have using new laws and reinforcing the ones already existent for gender equality. All these laws concern the access to the media, gender equality in regional electoral laws, and in the governing bodies of the public administration. And this is without taking into account that in 2003 the Constitution was amended to actively promote equal opportunities between women and men, Article 51, Paragraph 1, to which further legislative provisions were added over time, including the current electoral law. And this has made taken women to an interesting representation of women. What women in politics means? It means more trust in next generations. We need to contribute to a more open culture for diversity, and it is culture that is the most important thing. We are reaching very encouraging results, but we have a long way ahead to affirm a real equality between genders. And if we don't, until we reach our objective, we should not stop. We need sacrifice and solidarity. What can we do to accelerate this process and render it irreversible? We have to work to create conditions to conciliate public and personal lives. We need to educate young people to not have prejudices, to create a new generation of political leaders that are conscious and sure of themselves. We need to reinforce the gender quotas to guarantee an equilibrated representation in all the political institutions. One of the main obstacles for the female representation is the perceptions that are very sexist about women in society, and also violence. Many of these problems affect women. A study of the the United Interparliamentary Union in Europe has shown that gender violence affects women in politics and and the consequences are ignored. We have to have campaigns of formation and information to reveal a code of conduct, sexism, violence, physical, body shaming, interfere with the right of women to be active subjects in the politics of a country. The aim, law enforcement is that women should not this is important for all the social structure. We need to recognize that the progress is become unsustainable because it was based on a look based on the male vision of things. What lacked was the view of women. We need to enrich this relation. The view of women have different care for the planet, peace, justice, care for children and vulnerable people. It's not only a question of rights of one part of the humans, but the responsibility to create the future. In 1975, Oriana Fallaci has written that being a woman is so fascinating. It's an adventure that requires such courage, a challenge that never ends. But it still needs courage to fight for equal opportunities. It is a fight against people that give more importance to body over intelligence. Che tuttavia produce I suoi frutti avvelenati nella società contemporanea. Nella società dei social, it is a fight against those who value the body more than intelligence, more than the spirit, more than the soul. In the society of social media and free knowledge accessible to all, there are ideological remnants of primitive worldview. It is primordial. The fight is of all of us. We need to write the new rules to change our history and to go ahead. Thank you.
Muito obrigada. Eu gostaria de dizer que
Thank you very much. I'd like to say that you're all quite welcome to have your moments of speech. We have many opportunities for dialogue here. However, throughout all panels, we have in large type font, we have allotted 5 minutes for your speech. I'm asking our friends from the tech department, when you reach 5 minutes, please, you should mute the microphone. So please, keep an eye on the timer, because as soon as you are about to finish your time allotted for speaking, please conclude your speech. I pass the floor on to the representative from Indonesia.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Honorable Chair, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I would like to once again express my sincere appreciation to the Brazilian Parliament for hosting the first P20 meeting of Women Parliament here in Maceió. It is truly a great honor for me. My name is Rati Megasari Singkaru, and I'm a member of the Committee for Interparliamentary Cooperation of the House of Representatives of Republic of Indonesia to also speak before you today. So, ladies and gentlemen, one of the essence of democracy is ensuring opportunities for women to participate equally in all aspects of life. But sadly, in the modern 21st century, women around the world are still facing enormous challenges of violence, poverty, and food insecurity, and not to mention the catastrophic situation in Gaza Strip, where many of the victims due to the Israeli strikes are women and also children. This may deepen gender inequality and threaten peace, stability, and also the development. Therefore, to ensure the legislations that tackle factors of gender inequality is indeed very essential. However, peace, stability, and development cannot be achieved without women's full and meaningful participation. Especially, studies have shown that a greater number of women in parliament leads to stronger attention to issues affecting women. To achieve significant progress, parliaments must ensure that the measures are in place to facilitate women's representations in politics and to eliminate the barriers, including financial constraints, stereotypes, and violence, and furthermore to measures that can address unpaid care work issues. Ladies and gentlemen, as Indonesia recently had an election, our parliament is projected to have around 22.1% women representation compared to the current period of over 21%, although we are still aiming to reach 30% affirmative quota. Indonesia also already adopted law on the welfare of mothers and children, which offers paternity leaves, and has also just launched the roadmap for care economy that prioritize, among others, childcare services. Furthermore, law and sexual violence crime that covers offline and online sexual harassment and abuse, which are punishable by prison, and encompasses victims' treatments, protection as well as recovery, including medical rehabilitation, restitution, and social reintegration. And in relation to violence, such act including threats of violence is also a criminal act punishable by prison under the Indonesian Criminal Code. Additionally, we formed the Caucus of Women Parliamentarians of the Republic of Indonesia in 2011, and in 2022, the caucus signed a declaration that condemns any form of gender-based violence that hinders women from fulfilling their equal rights. Ladies and gentlemen, building collaboration with our male colleagues in the parliament is also very crucial, which we have exercised in our parliament. We must make them as allies to campaign and advocate for increasing women's participations in politics. Furthermore, we must conduct effective parliamentary diplomacy to implement the P20 joint statement adopted in India last year that underlines commitment to improving the level of gender sensitivity of our parliaments in view of increasing women representation. And remember, women's voice matters and can foster positive change in this world. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you very much. I pass the floor to our representative from St. Thomas and Príncipe. Thank you very much for your collaboration and staying on time. St. Thomas and Príncipe, thank you very much. Thank you very much. To me, it really is a great reason for a lot of joy to provide my contributions in this debate that we have, which has as a purpose to recognize, acknowledge, and value the role of women in the decision-making processes in politics that may contribute to the building of a fair world by aiming to strengthen the democracy. However, it's worthwhile to note that while we're inserted in these democratic societies, and even though we have more women than men in society, their female representativeness in political power spaces is still lacking, while it's composed by reduced women. Even though we have reached an important position in society through several fights to reach this, we can still see that there's still a little bit of loosening the engagement of women in political life due to several reasons, which stop or hinder their active participation. Being one of them, the gender prejudice. On the other hand, several women, they are undergoing discrimination and sexism, which makes it difficult for them to have influence and power in the political media. Even while those embarrassments makes it so that we have to highlight this point to the main political decision makers, and also so that actual measures are taken so that we can reverse this scenario which does not dignify the female cohort or class. The presence of women in politics has several advantages, such as the representation of several different perspectives and also the inclusion of topics which are relevant for the promotion of gender equality and also the well-being in general of the society. So I believe that the main solutions to promote the female participation and the participation of women in politics consists in the implementation of policies that might determine gender quota in the promotion of the campaign for the raising of awareness on the importance of the gender equality in politics, and also the running of programs that incentivize the female leadership through the creation of qualification programs, however, to prepare them to work assertively on a political environment. In São Tomé and Príncipe, we have been making significant efforts to ensure the effective inclusion of women in the political life and also in leadership positions. The recent approval of the parity law by the São Tomé's Parliament, which ensures the minimum participation of 40% and the maximum of 60% participation of women in electable positions, is a testimony of this commitment that we have. Moreover, we have in the São Tomé's Parliament, we have instituted the Network of Parliamentarian Women, which is based on an article based on the parity law for the creation of competencies for a committee whose purpose is to implement this law and also to draft reports on the state of its application of the several state bodies. The Commission is presided by the chairwoman of the Network of Parliamentarian Women, which is composed of women in parliament, which has representatives from the Gender Equality and Equity Society, the members of the Women's Society, and also civil society, which are linked to gender issues. One of the main objectives of this commission consists in raising the awareness and to promote the active participation of women in a way to incentivize or foment a greater female representation in the decision-making spheres in our country. Through these initiatives, we try to not only reach the gender parity, but also to ensure that the voices and the perspectives of women are fully integrated in the political processes and also governance processes in São Tomé and Príncipe. To conclude, I reassure with all my certainty that female participation in politics is indeed fundamental for the strengthening of democracies and also for the building of a more fair and equal society. So I will stop here and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for staying on time. I pass the floor to Bolivia.
Gracias. Hola.
Muchas
Bueno,
gracias. En principio,
muchas
quiero
gracias.
saludar
Muy buenos días a todos.
a este encuentro P20 a todas las mujeres en esta mañana.
In this morning.
También quiero felicitar
I would also like to congratulate the organizers of this event, such an important event for all women. My name is Simona Quispe. I'm the Vice President of the House of Representatives, the Chamber of Senators in Bolivia. In Bolivia, we have fought so many battles, and thanks to the unity of women, we have been able to achieve that we are taking into account in the constitution of the state so that women have the right of equity. Our battles have not been in vain. We have had our blood. We have had battles of different organizations, and thanks to that unity, we have been part of the constitution, political constitution of the state. In the 90s, in Bolivia, only 10% of women were in parliament. Since passing the new constitution of the state in 2009, the new criteria have been taken into account to have a biggest participation of women in the House of Representatives. 40 years later, we have had the opportunity to have this organization, also in different municipalities and departments. In the elections, general election of 2020 to 2025, the participation of women was of 46.9% in the House of Representatives, and also a 55.5% in the Chamber of Senators, with 36 senators of men and women. Nowadays, we are 20 women and 16 men. So we have had to go through 10 electoral processes in Bolivia so that women have a good presence in the political representation in Bolivia. In 2010 to 2015, new laws were passed in favor of women, such as the law of the electoral election. In order to be a candidate, we need to have equity in the electoral government. Also, the law of overcoming racism and discrimination. The law of decentralization, Andrés Ibáñez, and also against harassment and political violence. The integral law to guarantee women a free life of violence. The battle that women have fought has allowed us to go into the full rights until the moment we conquer the gender equality. Individual rights and collective rights, and they are the result of a new constitution that promulgates and guarantees the participation of women coming from principles of equity. These conquests have become into a growing participation of women in spaces of power, which means an important step in the process of construction of democracy, intercultural of the state of Bolivia. Bolivia is the first state in the area of having a law against political violence and political harassment against women. This law was passed in order to ensure the legal rights of women to avoid harassment in politics. It hasn't been easy. All women that are here, to be here, being mothers, and we have gone through many difficulties to be here, to be present here. We are here, and it is true that in some countries this process is missing. More than 50% in the chamber we have in Bolivia. Thank you so much.
Once again, please, I require you to end on time. And now I'm going to call the next speaker, the representative of Cape Verde, Georgina. We had a problem with Bolivia that we are going to solve. The person that spoke should not have spoken now, but I want to call the next country and we'll solve the Bolivian case. Cape Verde, please, you have 5 minutes. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We start our intervention by thanking our host, Brazil, for the invitation and the opportunity to be here today and be able to share with the world what we have in terms of relevance and advancements of women in our society, the promotion, and with all the challenges we have. And with this topic, we have to implement strategies to increase the women participation in politics. And we can refer to the Constitution of the Republic that in its Article 24 brings the principle of equality and ends the discrimination regarding gender. And the Article 4 establishes that it is mandatory for the state of Cape Verde to create progressively the necessary condition to overcome all obstacles that won't allow the full development of human people and limit equality among citizens and effective participation of them in the political, economical, and social culture organization of the state. And in Cabo Verde, electoral code, according from 2010 in its 5th article, says that there must be a balanced equity between genders, and according to the law, we need to have at least 25% of female candidates. It was approved by the National Assembly in 2017, aiming to ensure a true equality of rights between men and women, establishing at least 40% of each gender in the list of candidates for political power, namely the National Assembly, the municipal chambers, the municipal assembly, and other bodies. The Cape Verde Institute for Equity and Equality of Gender presented many actions of sensibilization and qualification to increase the participation of women in democratic processes. The National Assembly, through its complementary Women of Women, has promoted many actions in terms of developing sovereign organs and other organizations in civil society, promoting the participation of women. The action plan of advocacy and gender from 2017 to 2019 had the following goals: increase the awareness of the Cape Verde society for the collective promotion to adopt a national agenda of parity, and foreseeing the constitutional capacity for the democracy of gender parity in the society, and other key measures. By analyzing the participation of women from Cape Verde in politics, we conclude that there was a progressive increase, even though we started at very low levels. There were 3 representatives among 186 chairs, and there was 1 woman in government. From 1991 on, with the implementation of democracy in the country, the participation of women in politics increased, but very slowly. In 2017, after 26 years, we had 23.6% of women in parliament. In 2021, after being applied for the first time the parity law in elections, we saw that the political parties presented more balanced lists for elections, 62.5% equivalent to 45 men, 37.5 equivalent to 27 women. So this data shows clearly that even though we increased our participation in politics actively in 3.9% after the application of the parity law, it is still not enough. There's a notorious increase in women that are city councilors, there are representatives, but we cannot follow these dynamics in the heads of the lists for municipal chambers. We have only 3 women that were elected chamber House of Representatives president in Cape Verde municipal houses. And the elections this year, the scenario for this year is not so positive. The scenario for Cape Verde presented a scenario of legislative elections 2021. The studies were made to assess the political behavior in perspective of gender, measure the political participation of women in elections as well. We ended up recognizing that obviously Cape Verde is in the way to resolve these asymmetries, prioritizing measurements of politics that aim to ensure better balance and equal participation of genders. But we still have many challenges to face regarding the promotion and assurance of a greater participation of women in politics. We have to work with the families, Cape Verde society at the level of education as well, so that we have a balance between men and women in all pivotal sectors, especially in decision-making positions and politics. Women improve politics, that's for sure, and consequently, the world. Thank you.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you very much.
Convido a senhora
And I invite
Patrícia
Ms.
Faro,
Patricia Faro,
representante de Portugal,
delegate
para
from
sua
Portugal,
fala.
for her speech.
Obrigada.
Thank you very much.
Caras colegas
My dear
parlamentares,
parliamentarian
senadoras,
colleagues,
senhoras e
senators,
senhores.
ladies and
Sou
gentlemen.
parlamentar,
I am a
deputada
parliamentarian.
da Assembleia
I am
Municipal
a deputy in the
hoje aqui
National
também
Assembly.
enquanto
Today I'm here also
representante
as a
da
representative of the
da Assembleia Parlamentar da
Republic Assembly of the APCPOP. I'd like to, on behalf of the organization, to thank the chairman of the Chamber of Deputies, Mr. Arthur Lira, our host, and also greet the entire organization group of this meeting, the first meeting of women parliamentarians, which is an event which is extraordinarily important, which has a lot of meaning, because in fact it is in this effort together that we can change our political actions. This year in Portugal, and speaking of our country specifically, we conclude many years of democracy. Now let's speak a little bit more about this course of being a woman in our country. I would say it's a process ongoing towards equality. It's a road that is still midway. However, because of that, we all must be paying a lot of attention so there's no steps taken back. So in the political decision-making processes, in the political representation spaces such as is the parliaments, in the Republic Assembly, in the very first Constitutional Assembly in 1964, the representation of women in parliaments was quite irrelevant. Years later, even with changes in the Constitution, the participation of women and men in 2005 was still around of 1/5 of the members of the Assembly of the Republic. Now, only in 2006, with the parity law, the first legal measure for the positive action in Portugal for the decrease in the disparity between men and women in some of the decision-making bodies, being the most emblematic in our democratic architecture is the Assembly of the Republic, the European Parliament, and also the authoritarian bodies. This was implemented in 2009, and immediately it had a sort of, if we could say so, had a positive result. We started having 63 women in a parliament that had 230 chairs. A few years later, 2009, after the change in this 2017 law of parity, we had a minimum of 40% parity between women and men in political decision-making, and we raised that to 38.7%, below 40%. The threshold was still very good results. In 2022 and 2024, between these 2 years, we had a slight decrease, 36.6% in 2024. However, still, we are close to the threshold, and we're also striving to attain the 40%. In the European Parliament, it's noteworthy the impact of this parity law, and we started having the representation of women from 25% in 2024 to 42.8% in 2019, from 2004 to 2019. There's legislation in Portugal which has relation to the business sector, and also the 1st of August 1707 law, which needs to have the equal number of men and women in the inspection bodies. Those who do not attain to that will not be accepted. So in general terms, in Portugal, over the past few decades, the topic has gained a lot of visibility, which is the fruit of the social pressure, specifically the social actors, international institutions and European institutions, feminist movements and NGOs, which are linked to the women's rights. To conclude my speech, how do we materialize then this balanced in the decision-making process? First of all, we have to have the mainstream in gender. The gender issue is transversal in all of the dominions of the government actions. We must keep that in mind. A special attention to the valuing of the gender impact in all of the political actions, specifically the legislative actions. They are not neutral at this point. So, to keep equality between men and women in terms of measures, Portugal has a national strategy for the non-discriminatory equality up to 2030, and we want to see this promotion of this equality to shine a light on all types of stereotypes between men and women. How are we doing today? Even though the international current researches show that quotas and these are not necessary conditions or enough to increase the women's participation in politics, it has indeed influenced positively all of the women that have been elected. So I have to say that in a short, brief history in terms of equality, we understand that the past show us how to improve, and the future is going to depend on what we do today. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mazia. I thank for the contributions and also to stay on time. I pass the floor now to a representative from Mozambique, Ms. Telmina Pereira. Thank you very much. My name is Telmina Pereira. I'm a delegate and a member of the Permanent Assembly of the Republic of Mozambique. Please allow me to salute and greet His Excellency Arthur, who is the chairman of the Chamber of Deputies of Brazil, for hosting this very first meeting of parliamentarian women of the member states of the G20. I extend my greetings to all the delegations who are present here today. The theme Women Empowered by expanding the women's representativeness in this decision-making spaces is complex and interdisciplinary. Statistics on a world scale points towards a growing number of women in parliaments and also in decision-making spaces and positions for the making of gender equality and also for better qualification of women in general. However, there are still some contradictory positions in studies that have been conducted which show that the participation of women in politics by itself does not automatically signify an enlargement of opportunities for development on the socio-economic realm. In terms of Mozambique, with the constitution in 1990, Mozambique opened up and determined itself as a democratic state of rights, based on a plurality of expressions, the political democratic expression, also the insurance of the fundamental rights of men and women. One of the solidified principles in the Constitution is the equality of gender, the equality of rights, in other words, between men and women, which is going to continue to consolidate through several of the legal aspects, which ensures and eliminates all of the inequalities and promotes the emancipation and participation of women in all of the spheres of societary life. Mozambique has a gender policy and a strategy for this implementation with the goal of promoting the emancipation of women and also the participation of women in the decision-making bodies, inequality in circumstances such as with men. In a country in which 53% of the population of the country is women, which has quite concerning poverty rates, and most of the individuals in poverty are women. The regional and international diplomas, they stimulate the participation of women in politics and indicates the recognition and acknowledgement of their political openness so that women can participate more and more actively in the country life. As an example, the ratification of the Convention on all the forms of discrimination of women has led to the basis of approval by Mozambique of legislative diplomas such as the law against domestic violence, which penalizes all kinds of violences enacted against women. And also the law for families, the law for the patrimonial, and also promotes the rights of women in circumstances equal to men. And also the law against premature unions, which also protects women, girls, young girls from going into an early marriage, and also the ratification of resolutions from the Council of Safety from the UN for the gender equality on a war context and also peace and safety, which appeals to the need for the participation of women in matters which are related to peace and safety. The national plan and also the gender policy and its strategy for implementation of the creation of gender units in all the ministries of the government of Mozambique. With all these political and legal tools that have been adopted and approved, there's a general legal and political context that leads to an incentive in the participation of women in the decision-making processes. Another more specific action related to the political parties has to do with the definition of quotas for elections and also political participation of women in decision-making bodies. Even with this quota criteria, we still feel that we are not satisfying women's eagerness to fight for better inclusion in the decision-making bodies so that they may influence the policies that value as a whole, regardless of the background, race, and etc., all the aspects that have to do with it. It's based on this set of actions that Mozambique has become one of the countries with the most representativeness of women in decision-making positions. In 2022, the country has reached, for instance, the gender parity in the government, placing itself as one of the 14 countries in the world that has gender parity, and the third country in Africa that has 50% of women in its government in ministries. In our government, have women in institutions such as the Republic's Assembly with a percentage above 43% in participation, and many women are occupying positions of importance. Members of the Permanent Commission, the Presidency, specialized commissions of work, and also the institutionalization of the Committee of the Parliamentarian Women, which has an important and determining role for the making of laws which are going to favor the fight that women have for equality. We have also an example to mention, which is sovereignty institutions such as the Administration Court, the General Attorney's Office, and the Republic, which are being led by women. Even though Mozambique is at a satisfying level in this regard, we still have many challenges ahead of us, which have to do with difficulties in the financial realm and also in confidence in terms of the capacity of women in making politics and also making the difference that we so much need. We still have the challenge of incentivizing the political leaderships in our parties to promote more participation of women so that we are better represented and so that we can contribute with our capacities for the taking of measures for the promotion and advancements of women's rights. I'd like to thank again for the opportunity of us to be here today and also to provide our perspective and our experiences on the work that we conduct as parliamentarians and also as women in politics for the advancements of women in politics in Mozambique. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Now I want to pass the floor to the representative of Spain, Maria Mar Bianco.
Muy buenos días a todas. Mi nombre es
Miss Maria Mar Blanco, and it's an honor for me to address you as a representative of the Senate in Spain, next to my companion and senator, who is also here with us in this first meeting of P20 Parliamentary Women. I thank Brazil, that is the leader of P20, for this initiative that is gathering over 300 parliamentary women of different countries. This meeting strengthens our alliance and allowed us to keep going in our fight for dignity. Our presence here shows our commitment in Spain to contribute to the creation of a fairest society. A society that is growing cannot be understood without women making decisions. The representation of women in parliaments is essential to reflect the diversity of our societies and to ensure that public policies answer to the needs of population. Our duty as parliamentary women is to continue the work of those women in the past that risk everything, their status, their life, to open the way to equity nowadays. In Spain, we have passed so many laws, plans to make a balance between professional and life and familiar life. But still, we have a lot to do, because equity is a duty that we all must work on, men and women. In order to increase the women participation in making decisions, we need to work on three axes that close the problem of the salary, to eradicate the violence against women, and to promote the presence of women in public life. Salaries are essential in the process of building a society that is fair. For example, in Spain, according to statistics, women only win 64.3% of the salary that men made. Spain, according to some statistics, shows a delay of 8.9% compared to other developed countries into salaries. Also, the problem with the salaries and the lease is a huge problem in Spain, the maternal leave. It is clear that women have the right to choose to be mothers without that being a problem for their professional work. That's why we need to pass some laws to prevent violence, which is crucial for women to participate fully in the decision-making process. This will not only benefit women, but will also strengthen communities' organization, and it will promote a fairest development. In Spain in 2017, by a vast majority, almost by every party, was passed a covenant, a pact of state against domestic violence that shows unity and is the only way to eradicate this problem if we all work together in this fight. It is super important also to promote political participation of women in all the decision-making process, ensuring the participation in parliament, governments, and other institutions. At the same time, we cannot lose the meritocracy process. We need to give equal opportunities to everybody. We need to eradicate barriers, and we need to acknowledge each person's merits. This is the only way to promote innovation. In order to reach to the same rights for women and men, is the only way to ensure a fair society, to ensure employment will also take out borders and will allow us to have opportunities to combat inequality. That's why we have the commitment and responsibility of working together for an inclusive and fairest world, so that women have freedom to decide over their life and not being underestimated or labeled. If we want a true society, a fair society, freedom means that every person has a right to choose their own fate. In a true democracy, freedom cannot fight equity, and equity cannot fight freedom. We have many reasons to be optimistic. We need to follow the example of brave women like Clara Cattermole, who played an important role in the women voting process in 1931. Let's not fall into the risk of only working with theory. We need to go into action. If you want something to be made, you need to tell a woman. Let's make history together. Thank you so much, and congratulations to Brazil for this wonderful job.
Muito obrigada.
Muchas gracias.
Passo a palavra
Thank you. I want to pass the floor
à senhora
to
Emília Cerqueira, de
Emilia
Portugal.
Cerqueira from Portugal.
Boa tarde a todos.
Good afternoon.
Mais uma vez,
Once again,
cumprimento
I
desde
want
ontem, é
to
gosto voltar a estar
greet
neste painel.
everyone. I'm very pleased to be in this panel. It's a collective panel.
Papel das mulheres na representação.
And about the importance of women in representation, my colleague, Patricia Faro, that came before me, already mentioned this action of work, and she showed a very true portrait of Portugal regarding women representation in power, saying I'm not going to spend my 5 minutes but I think it's very important to exchange experiences. So I just want to issue a great work, and may we all learn in our political studies and goals so everyone can achieve equality. Thank you so much.
Muito obrigada. Passa a palavra
Thank you. Now I want to pass the floor to
a
Bolivia.
senhora Eva.
Mrs. Eva.
Buenos días a todos los presentes. Eu quero parabenizar a Organização do Brasil pelo convite que fez para todas as mulheres parlamentárias de diferentes países e o mundo. Estou muito feliz de estar aqui, de ser parte num cenário que é muito importante para poder fortalecer os laços que a gente tem e, fora isso, a luta das mulheres para poder permanecer e ocupar espaços de muita importância. Bolivia ha implementado diferentes luchas y diferentes espacios para poder jugarse estrategias y poder tomar en cuenta a las mujeres en escenarios de deliberación y legislativo. He tenido la oportunidad de representar a mi país. Mi nombre es Ebu Mérez, he sido diputada nacional.
I am a national deputy, one of the youngest deputies in the parliament. Nowadays, I'm a national senator in my country. Young people that make such an important, that plays such an important role in order to support the people from Bolivia. The law that talks about the electoral process was passed in 2010 and is super important to ensure equity in the different legislative space. That's why when we have a candidate that is a man, this law will produce the effect that also women need to be part of the candidature. That's why we can see that in 2014 we saw a big progress in the House of Representatives. More than 53% were women. Nowadays we have a bigger representation in the Senate. In Bolivia we have 36 senators. 19 of them are women. Nowadays we are in our 4th year in a row, because in Bolivia the Senate counts with 5 years. We didn't have a female president so far, and these scenarios are so important to promote this process. And I would like to be here for more days, and I hope that next year this space can be widened in the process that our country has gone through. Political harassment has affected all women who are in politics, And that's why so many people are so scared. That's why so many women are so scared and they don't want to participate in such an important event. That's why in our country we have such an important event, Law 243, the law that fights the political harassment against women. We know we have a long path to walk. We know we can be the instrument to carry on different proposals, different advancements in our countries to leave the women who come behind us a better path. And this is the purpose of us being here. Women that today are identified with our presence. I know it hasn't been easy. If so many of us, if any of us comes here and talks about their careers or all their suffering to be here to represent their countries, I'm sure that we will be talking for hours. And this is the example to keep going and to keep allowing women to identify with us, women that are still scared of being in these places. I know it has been tough, and this effort needs to be an example for the people who are behind us. We are seeing a president, a female president in Mexico, and we are really hoping that many more countries follow this example. I want to thank the organization, and I think that these spaces need to continue with a principal point of view to strengthen democracy, but also the spaces of power to women. Thank you so much.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you. I now would like to invite the representative of Mercosur, Mrs. Fabiana Martin.
Buenos días, estimadas colegas parlamentarias. Soy Fabiana Martín, la primera presidenta mujer del Parlamento del Mercosur, y es por eso que me atraviesa profundamente el honor de encontrarme en este foro, pudiendo intercambiar con ustedes. Y no solo desde ahí de ser la primera presidenta mujer del Parlamento del Mercosur,
I'm not only I'm a woman that 2 years ago was not thinking about regional politics. So I am here and I want to share 2 points of view. The vision of that woman that we referred to yesterday and today, the women we are working for, and another point of view, the woman that I am today, I'm sharing and leading and helping to make new strategies in the region. Undoubtedly, this work is requiring stronger presence of women because we have differences, characteristics. We have the ability to listen. We have the ability to work in teams, to have empathy, and the trust in power. Confidence in power. I think that we need to work on education for our girls and young women that allow them to have power. To teach them, we need to teach them to know themselves and to trust in them because each woman is different, so we need to walk side by side with them so that they can be able to know each other. It's so important the collaboration and mutual cooperation among us. And I want to highlight that in September, in Asunción, women in Parliament are going to start the Forum of Women Parliamentary in Mercosur to walk side by side with our parliamentary women to work together for equity. The acknowledgement is important. We need to learn how to recognize ourselves, how to acknowledge ourselves, acknowledge our efforts, and we need to motivate each other, and we need to walk side by side. The vision and acknowledgement and the social commitment. And to pay close attention in the need of gender parity. It's not a right, it's a natural thing. We cannot think of it as a different way. We need to be together in the decision-making process, together in the power. So I wonder, why such a resistance to be equal in Parliament? Why are you so scared? Are we afraid? Are we scared of losing space in power? The decision-making process together will lead us to a world full of equity, free, fair. I invite you to reflect on this so that we have into account that women have power. We have the power to heal the world. Thank you so much.
Muito obrigada.
Thank you. I want to invite now Mrs. Cynthia Lopez Castro from the Interparliamentary Union.
Passo a palavra
now I want to pass the floor
para a senhora Silvia Rooks,
to Mrs. Sylvia Rooks,
coordenadora da
President Coordinator for UN Women, for her contributions. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank you for your invitation from the President of the House of Representatives of Brazil, Mr. Arthur Lira, and I want to greet the senators and representatives from Brazil that are chairing this table, just like the General Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Maria Laura da Rocha. I want to greet especially women of parliamentaries and other authorities present. My name is Sylvia Rooks. I am the resident coordinator of UN in Brazil, and it's a pleasure for me to represent the General Secretary of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, in this important debate on women and politics. The equal participation of women in politics and in public life is a human right, and it's the ground for democratic societies. However, in all areas of the world, we are still far from this balance. 28 countries have a woman as head of the state, and only 27 of the parliamentaries in the world are women. We cannot ignore political violence as a decisive factor for the underrepresentation of women in these spaces, especially when we know that more than 80% of women in parliaments have suffered some kind of violence related to their political work. In Brazil, the challenge to increase the participation of women in politics is still huge. But we have to remember that in the past elections, we registered advancement in participation of women in their diversity, with an increase of women that are black, trans, and indigenous, bringing new perspectives for the debates in the National Congress. Many experiences show that having more women in spaces of power contribute to less conflict, to better conditions of life, and more equality, because the discussions reflect even more precisely the aspirations of the societies, and they use all the capacities available. Recently, the Vice General Secretary stated that the lack of women in these spaces explain, in a great part, our low levels of human development and persistent conflicts. We have tools to solve these disparities. In the scope of United Nations, we have the Declaration of Beijing that determines the balanced political participation, the recommendations of the Committee for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, and even the 23rd Agenda signed by all member states include gender equality, the objective or the goal number 5, that is specific for the promotion of a women leadership in spaces of decision making. What we need is to effectively transform the systems that are established, the public policies, and our institutions. And for that, we need political will. I bring here the case of United Nations as an example. Our institution only reached the parity of gender in representation of United Nations in terms of a coordinator residents that are the highest in the countries, with the coming of a brave leadership from our current Secretary General. He was able, in over 70 years of UN, have half of these seats taken by women. And it was not difficult to find women that were prepared and committed to play these roles. I feel very pleased to share the space of debate with so many parliamentary women, because we know that your presence in decision-making spaces inspires, encourages, and promotes the participation and the commitment of other women in politics. Thank you so much.
Nós que agradecemos.
We thank you, and now I want to pass the floor to
Cecília,
Mrs. Cecilia,
representante da ONU Mulher.
Representing UN Women. Good morning, I'm Ms. Cecilia Lamani, Regional Adjunct Director for Latin America and the Caribbean. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And I want to thank you and congratulate you on everything we have heard. I will start in Portuguese, greeting in Mexico, and I'll finish in English so I can follow the dynamics of G20. I have three messages, 3 points that I want to show you, and these are things you already mentioned, but to lead you to the G20 declaration. The first is that it's time to go from quote to parity. We heard the experience of Mexico, and I want to greet the parliamentary women in Mexico for achieving parity. But we have 90 countries in Latin America that have a parity installed. That's an example of a region to the members of G20, and that will ensure
the full participation of women, democracy and the state of right, and also we have multiple dynamics.
Exemplos da região de avançar nesta agenda. As quotas começaram em 1991 em Argentina. Tem mais anos do que a Declaração de Pequim.
The Declaration of Beijing, and next year will be 30 years of the format of Beijing, and it would be interesting that G20 leaders and you strengthen the commitment to have a better public budget to implement the Declaration of Beijing in your countries.
The second message into English, and thanks in advance for the translators' patience. The second message is that in order to end violence against women in all their diversity, we really need to tackle political violence against women. In this region, in Latin America and the Caribbean, there are multiple dynamics as in all your countries around the world. We have advanced and 13 countries have typified somehow political violence against women, but we are still far from having, as the resident coordinator rightly said, all the systems, the institutions, the regulatory and the protocols in order to make it real. We heard about it in Brazil also yesterday. We need to ensure accountability and also tackle this new reality where online gender-based violence against women and women in public space, like parliamentarian women, is becoming real. All our recent research is showing that there is a continuum of violence between the digital violence to the real-life violence. And in this region, in our last assessment, we found that 30% of women have reduced their social and political presence in social media because of digital violence and the backlash they face. So this is going to the message that since we have more women in politics, we also have more violence against women because you are pushing back the pushback, as Secretary General Antonio Guterres likes to say. And it's true that you have to protect what has been achieved in terms of norms and laws, but there is far to go. So when you push back the pushback and you defend laws and laws against sexual violence, against rape and integral settings like you have been doing also in Brazil in recent days, you will face the pushback. And this requires solidarity networks like this first P20 meeting of women's parliamentarians and broad alliances. We heard the Bancada Femenina and also the experience in Mexico was like that. Plural platform of all parliamentarians, women pushing for parity and negotiating other reform agendas together with the parity agenda. And last but not least, because it's the last minute, you play a key role not only in advancing norms and changing stereotypes, as we heard these days, but also to promote the transformational revolution, I would even say, towards society care or care societies, as we have been promoting in Latin America together with all the women's ministries and machineries. You are key to approve gender equality budgets in the Congress for gender equality institutions, to strengthen them, to ensure that we are really going through comprehensive systems and policies for care. This is going to increase political participation, reduce poverty and inequality. I will come back on this in the afternoon when we talk about tackling poverty and inequalities. Thank you so much for your time. It's the last speech of this morning. Thank you for your patience.
Agradeço.
Thank you for your contributions. I want to invite Isa Huda and Laura Canero, representatives. They are adjunct from the Secretariat of Women, and I just want to make an announcement and ask you to stay on your seats, please. I'll speak about lunch and tell you about the next table. Laura Carneiro, good afternoon, everyone. We decided to make a surprise. It's a surprise to those that is the pioneer of the National Congress, the one that was a city councilor, representative, senator, governor, minister of state, and that today coordinates not only this event, but she coordinates the female caucus of the Congress of Brazil. This resilient woman, a Democrat, brought together all parties represented in this conference, representing all the House of Representatives. This woman that speaks to everyone, the queen of resilience, the queen of resistance, our dear Benedita da Silva. Congratulations, my dear. Congratulations. Please stand up. And I want you to receive this, representing all of us from national parliaments. It's really an award for your hard work, your history, and everything you represent for Brazilian women. Thank you so much. This is a representation of the hat of a warrior. Look how beautiful. This is the a warrior hat for really a true warrior like Benedita da Silva.
Eu quero cumprimentar a nossa
I want to greet our coordinator from the Secretary of Women. Her history precedes her. Benedita da Silva has a history of work, respect, loyalty, solidarity, and above all, a huge balance. You represent us, Benedita da Silva, a woman with your strength, with your energy, and your determination. I thank you all for coming to the same table, and this session is adjourned, not before inviting you all for lunch, and next to return to this plenary for the third table of this meeting, speaking about tackling inequalities and promoting economic autonomy of women at 2 p.m. We'll be back. Thank you.